Welcome to Comic Universe, the only nerd-centric thing you need in your life. And today, I'm going to be doing a comic review. But before I go into it, let me give a shout-out to the person who graced me with this comic book a couple days ago via mail. Mount Vernon Kid. Chris, brother, I hope you're watching this because thank you so much for sending this and the other book, which I'll be covering eventually. I just need to read through it. But yeah, Chris, aka Mount Vernon Kid, has been sending us comics over the time period, and I was thinking, well, Craig and I were thinking that maybe we should wait to get together and talk about these comics, but due to certain circumstances, from here on out, whatever comics I get from Chris, I'm going to be putting reviews on this channel. And you guys seem to dig the comic reviews a lot, so yeah. Anywho. So yeah, let's get on with it. Let's get on with the review, and that is G.I. Joe versus the $6 Million Man. Why they didn't call it the Bionic Man to make it shorter is beyond me. So G.I. Joe versus the Bionic Man is written by hang on, had to look at the artist, Ryan Ferrier, and artwork is done by S.L. Gallant. I don't know, but anyway. So this comic is a collaboration between IDW and Dynamite Comics, and yeah, it's a 4-issue miniseries. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun, and this is coming from a guy who knows next to nothing about the $6 Million Man. Yeah, so Bionic Man, $6 Million. I'm just gonna call it Bionic Man for reference, because that's a little shorter. So, G.I. Joe versus the Bionic Man is a pretty straightforward comic. It is a very straightforward comic. The story is that Steve Austin... No, not that Steve Austin. Not the wrestler. No, not the wrestler. Guys, get that image out of your head. Steve Austin, Colonel Steve Austin, who was sent on a mission. Cobra captures him and reprograms him to be an agent of Cobra, to which they then use to attack a part of Switzerland that is like the... you know, the things of Swiss bank accounts? This is where that building, the Infinity Tower, is this holder of all these bank accounts of the world's most wealthiest people in the world, as well as a vast majority of banks across the world. It handles all that money, and they take control of the entire... Cobra takes control of the entire area, while at the same time planning to attack the peace accords that are going to give more support to G.I. Joe globally against their war on Cobra and terrorism in general. So that's the story on a whole. It's a 4-issue miniseries, pretty friggin' straightforward, guys. And it's actually kind of funny, because when I sat down and thought about it as I was reading this comic, I had this sudden epiphany. This comic is like a better version of Secret Empire. No, really, it is. It's a better version of Marvel's Secret Empire. A villain gets, a hero gets reprogrammed by a villainous terrorist organization. All the heroes have to fight them, and, all the other heroes have to fight them, and it's on the villains' ground, which have taken over a large country. Yeah, it's Secret Empire, guys. This is straight up, Ryan Ferrier's equivalent of Secret Empire. Now, I'm going to be straight with you guys. It's a fun comic, don't get me wrong. This is a fun comic, but this image you're seeing right here of, Snake Eyes fighting, Steve Austin with Storm Shadow and the Bionic Bigfoot in the background. Yeah, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. I wanted to see Bigfoot in this comic, the Bionic Man version of Bigfoot in here, but we don't get that. We also don't get a Snake Eyes Bionic Man fight. In fact, we don't get a lot of Joes in here. Like, you don't get to see Flint, you don't get to see Duke, a couple other, No Shipwreck. We do get Roadblock and Lady Jane, Scarlet, and a few other, lesser ones. And I see where he was, where Ferrier was going with this, is that he was doing more of, instead of the animated series of G.I. Joe, he was basing it more on the action figures. He was basing it more on the G.I. Joe action figures in this continuity. Which is actually a cool idea, instead of following the 80s cartoon, which it does to some extent, but it's actually following more of the toy lines for G.I. Joe and the original TV show for G.I. Joe, and I like that because, yeah, for those who don't remember, there was a toy line of G.I. Joe before the animated series. Yeah, so I'm glad they kind of followed that a little more. And I like that, and it does It is set in the 70s. This comic is set in the 70s, so I do dig how that kind of plays into this. Now, here's the other thing, and I've talked about this with most crossovers in comic books, is that the best way to do crossovers is to give light to both properties. But this time I'm gonna let that pass because I know next to nothing about the $6 Million Man. I know next to nothing about this, and honestly, you could have done this comic, this storyline without Steve Austin, because they don't really do anything special with him other than he's a bad guy now for 3 issues, and then he's good towards the 4th one. But that's the thing, is that I'm kind of at peace with that because I know next to nothing with Bionic Man. But DPZ, if that's the case, why did you want to read this? Well, I always dig when G.I. Joe crosses over with something. That's why I really enjoyed the G.I. Joe versus Street Fighter comic, even though that one's not great, but fun. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. And yeah, the 6 million. This one, at least, if you don't know anything about the the Bionic Man, then congratulate. If you just know that he's a dude who gets made faster, better, stronger, yeah, then congratulations. That's all you need to know with this comic book. Hell, they tell you straight up front everything you need to know in the trade about Steve Austin, and that's all you need to know. They don't bring in other characters to really. The only one they really bring in is the guy who helped rebuild Steve Austin, Oscar Goldman. And they do mention OSI, the group he works for. But other than that, yeah, you're good. You're totally good with not knowing a lot about the $6 Million Man. There is some great action pieces in here. I will admit, yeah, like I said, it does feel more like a G.I. Joe story than it does a G.I. Joe and Bionic Man story. But this time I'm going to let it slip. I'm going to let it slide because really, I'm more, I know next to nothing about the $6 Million Man, other than, the base knowledge of, oh, he's faster, better, stronger, and he's a cyborg dude, alright. So I'm kind of at peace with that, and I think it's a cool idea that having Cobra reprogram him and be like their ultimate agent, even though they don't really, take too much advantage of that, because they could have honestly done this whole mission without Steve Austin. Like, again, the sad part of that, you could have done this entire comic without, you could have done this as just a G.I. Joe story. Although, admittedly, they do some cool stuff with, Steve Austin's technology. And they do something interesting with Tomax and Xamot. I don't want to spoil what they do with Tomax and Xamot in here. But it's like, finally you did something cool with them. About time. There's also a really kick-ass fight between Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Not gonna lie. And if you dug the original 70s toy line of G.I. Joe, there's a Joe they bring in that I haven't seen in a long time. And I was like, well, if you were going to fight the Bionic Man, he's the perfect guy to have fight him. I don't want to... If you are a diehard Joe fan, you probably know who I'm talking about. But I was like, yeah, if you're going to have anybody fight, the Bionic Man, that guy's the perfect chance if you have beating him. So that was a neat thing. But yeah, all in all, this is a pretty decent comic. It's only 4 issues long. The trade is about is $15.99 in US, so it's actually pretty cheap. And like I said, you don't need to know a lot about the $6 Million Man mythos to really get this comic. But yeah, this is more if you're a G.I. Joe fan and you just at least know what the Bionic $6 Million Man is all about, then congratulations, you can read this comic no problem. So this is pretty fun. I'm really excited to read, because Ryan Ferrier also wrote another crossover I really want to read, and that is a King Kong Planet of the Apes crossover. And that trade comes out next month. So hopefully I can get my hands on that, because that looks really spectacular. And I have seen little previews here and there, and I dug what I saw. So I'm really looking forward to reading. I really want to read that when it comes out. So that's the big thing right there, is that's Ryan Ferrier has already got me like, alright, you clearly know how to write crossovers. Another little thing I want to just holler at real quick is that some of the artwork's, yeah, like some of it's good, but face-wise, like, man, there are just some bad facial expressions, like dude, Scarlet looks like a straight-up dude in some cases. So yeah, I forgot to mention that. But it's not completely jarring. It's just that when they do close-up on faces, I'm like, oh, god damn, what the fuck? So, yeah, all in all, if you like G.I. Joe, you're going to be really pleased if you're a G.I. Joe fan. If you're a $6 million man, if you're a fan of the Bionic Man, then sorry, you kind of get thrown under the bus a little bit, but it's still fine. I mean, if you're not much of a fan, then yeah, this might get you interested. But can we now, Dynamite? Can we have the Bionic Man, cross over with Terminator or RoboCop? That'd be actually really kind of kick-ass. You guys should get together with Boom Studios or Dark Horse on either one of those. So there you go, guys. That's pretty much my review for this comic book. Just comment below, let me know what you guys thought, and once again, hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you once more in the universe.